If I could only share one thing about mixing, this is the most important tip that I would give. Hey, hi. Isn't he so cute? Thanks DistroKid for sending this over. They sent this over the holiday along with this music production ABCs book. I wish I had this when I was a kid. It has like all these important music production terms and explains what they are to a kid's level, and the illustrations are friggin' awesome. So like, way to go DistroKid. Thanks for sending this over. We're not going to be going over the music production ABCs, but we will be going over 5 essential tips for mixing that actually matter. Now, first off, if you're watching this video and you do not know the basics about how to produce a song, how to compose a song, and what makes a song, then you're not ready to be mixing, so don't watch this video. You can be the greatest mixer of all time, but if your song sucks, then it's always gonna suck, no matter how well you mix it. So now that that's out of the way, mixing tip number 1. Try not to use EQ or compression or anything on any of your tracks. Hear me out, you will do this later, but it's an exercise to actually get you to figure out how to level and volume your tracks the right way. So what I typically do is I have all of my tracks, I put them all at 0 and start with the first one at a time, level it out on what volume I think it actually needs to be, and then add the next instrument and adjust the volume fader for that, and keep going throughout every single track in your project until you feel that all of them are well balanced in relation to each other. Then you can look at your master bus and see how loud your overall mix is, and if you feel that your instruments are in relation to each other mixed properly, then all you have to do is select all of your tracks and lower them down so that you're closer to that sweet spot, which is usually -6 dB, which is about how loud you want your overall mix to be before you send it off to mastering. I promise you, if you do this first, you're gonna find out that some of the decisions that you make with EQ and compression are irrelevant, and it's basically one of the fundamentals of mixing, just understanding the relationship between one track and the other, and that begins with volume. Once you've kind of sorted out how to really listen to, okay, are my hi-hats way too loud? Are they too in your face? Are they taking over the show? Are they competing with the vocal? That's when you look at EQ, compression, and other things like that to help mitigate and help things play nicely within the frequency range. But if you tackle the volume first, I promise you, it's going to help you in the long run. Okay, mixing tip number 2. I can't tell you how many times I feel like I've got it down. Mixed my song and it sounds awesome, mastered it, and I feel like it just sounds great. It's the best thing I've ever mixed in my life. And then I pull up a song on Spotify or Apple Music and it's not even close to sonically sounding the same. And I immediately can pick up on the flaws that my mix has. So tip number 2 is use a reference track or listen to reference tracks in between the times that you're mixing so you can really actually see what's missing in your mix, whether it's the mid-range, whether it's higher frequencies, that little crisp on the top. It doesn't need to be airy, doesn't need to be darker. All these kinds of components are gonna scream at you as soon as you listen to a professionally mixed track. Use reference tracks and use them often. Tip number 3, and this is a little bit related to what I said at the beginning. Basically, if you have a crappy song, it doesn't matter how good you mix it, it's still gonna be a crappy song. So actually care about your song before you start mixing it. Make sure you've got the right instrumentation, make sure you have things working from a composition standpoint, and actually care about your song. Care about the story that you're telling and help that inform your production decisions. Once you've got your production nailed down as far as like, this is where I'm playing this chord progression, and this is where I'm playing this melody, and this is where the counter melody comes in, and this is where the vocals come in, and this is where the drop happens. All of that needs to be spot on so that when you mix it, it actually gives the story and the vibe that you're looking for. Otherwise, it's just gonna sound like all these instruments playing okay together, but the song doesn't really mean anything or feel like anything. So actually care about the song that you're producing, not just about how good it sounds sonically. Tip number 4, this is a big one, and honestly, sometimes it's really hard to avoid doing this, but just everybody has done this at least one time, and probably a lot more times than once. What I'm referring to is mixing your tracks in solo mode. What does that mean? You're mixing every instrument individually versus adding another instrument and then mixing while those things are playing. Now, the reason why this matters is because you can listen to a kick drum and say, oh, you know what? It sounds great. It sounds deep and thick. And then you put it in the mix and it totally gets lost. And it's competing with the bass. And so you would never know those things if you were just listening to the kick sample by itself. In the context of the mix, you can easily see, you know what? I need some frequencies to punch through above the range of my 808s so that my kick actually punches through. And even though I really liked that like bassy sound to my kick, it's totally getting lost. And what I need is something punchy with a little bit more high end. Completely changes the decisions that you make in the mixing process when you actually mix them together versus just hitting solo, listening to your kick and saying, oh, I'm going to take away these frequencies because that's what I saw a video about, or because that's how I like it to sound by itself. It doesn't matter because it's never going to be played by itself. It's always going to be heard and listened to within the context of the mix. So mix your instruments in the context of each other. It makes a huge difference and helps you make better decisions in the mixing process. Last but not least, this is one of the most important tips of mixing that I could ever share with anyone. But before I share that final tip, I just want to thank DistroKid for sponsoring this video. DistroKid is an online distribution platform that I've been using for over a decade to distribute all of my music. This is the most affordable and easiest and fastest way to get your music on all streaming platforms. One of my favorite things about DistroKid is that they're constantly releasing new tools that are completely free and included with DistroKid to help the independent artist really promote their music. One of the tools that they provide is called the Visi Video Generator, and it will use your release and album artwork to create an audio visualization of your song so that you can easily share that on social media platforms and just promote your music. So if you're waiting to release music, stop waiting, use DistroKid, and if you use the link in the description, you'll get 7% off. If I could only share one thing about mixing, this is the most important tip that I would give. Break the rules. Now, what does that mean? There are some standard rules that, are very textbook when it comes to music production and audio engineering. Like, for example, cut off all the low end of every single instrument in your track except for your bass, because they don't need to live in those frequencies. You don't really need to do stuff like that. So people are like doing low cut filter, high pass filters on everything with no real rhyme or reason behind it other than they were told it's a rule. And here's the dangerous thing about that. The dangerous thing about that is that one, you're not making a creative decision, and two, you're following blindly. So you actually aren't really understanding what it's accomplishing for your mix. So yeah, though sometimes theoretically it makes sense, like yes, cut out every frequency where that sound does not need to exist so that other sounds that exist come through. Yes, that makes complete sense from a logical and theoretical standpoint, but from a practical standpoint and for something so creative and subjective, that's not going to help you in every single project. What's going to help you in every single project is really understanding those rules so that you know when to break them and what they're actually accomplishing. So that's my most important mixing tip I could share is stop just following instructions. Actually use your ears. I think that's one of the hardest things as a producer because we get all these knobs and cool plugins right in front of our face and they distract us. And all the buzz behind plugins and things like that distract us from what we're trying to accomplish. So break the rules. Forget anybody that told you that you have to do something a certain way every single time. Just do your thing. All of the crazy, talented producers and artists that have surged in the music industry, it's because they're not doing what everyone else is doing. It's because they're actually following their gut and their inspiration. So use your ears, throw out the textbook once in a while, and just really understand those rules so that you can break them. There you have it, guys. Those are my 5 tips to help you mix better. If you got some tips of your own that you want to share, feel free to share them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future videos. And as always, if you ever have any questions or want to see more content, check me out on Instagram or TikTok. Keep making beats.